Okay, so picture this. The crowd is just roaring.
Stadium lights. Blinding.
And you're watching a true rock legend Bono, the U2 frontman.
22 Grammys, something like 170 million records sold.
He is the absolute definition of a global celebrity.
But then the lights go down, the music stops.
Yeah.
And he moves, just seamlessly into a very different kind of room.
A quiet room.
A very quiet room, a room where you have presidents, prime ministers, G7 finance ministers. And in that room, the volume is zero, but the influence is immense.
And that right there, that is the paradox we're deep diving into today.
Yeah.
How does a rock star, a guy with a net worth around, $700 million?
Roughly, yeah.
How does he, not a politician, not a typical billionaire, not a CEO, how does he command the attention of the world's elite?
It's not just about, being famous or giving to charity.
No. This is about an invisible architecture he built to gain what we're calling silent power.
It's an incredible study in leveraged influence. And our mission for you, the listener, is to really get how Bono engineered a career that turned his artistic success into legitimate institutional policy-driving equity.
That's the silent power, the kind of influence that transforms institutions, not just pop culture trends.
Exactly. And when you look closely, you see his entire approach is just incredibly disciplined.
Right. It's not just about making a lot of money. It's about seeing that wealth as a tool. A necessary tool for leverage, for longevity, and at the end of the day, for a legacy. Okay, so let's unpack this financial foundation. U2, they started in, 1976?
Yeah, in a cramped little rehearsal room in Dublin with basically nothing.
With nothing.
Yeah.
But fast forward to the 2000s, and they're one of the highest grossing musical acts in history. Over 170 million albums.
That is a staggering amount of capital, just a fire hose of money coming in.
But the volume of money is less important than his philosophy about it.
Oh, way less important. Bono wasn't just wealthy, he was strategic about why he was wealthy. He summed it up perfectly in a 2005 interview. He said something like, "I don't mind being wealthy as long as I remember why."
And that single distinction changes everything, doesn't it?
Everything.
He wasn't seeing the money as a reward to be spent on yachts or private islands. He saw it as the cost of admission, the path to institutional power.
Exactly. Without that capital, that stability, his voice is just another artist's opinion.
Right, it has no teeth.
No teeth at all. And this philosophy, it demanded really strategic business decisions from the very start.
So U2 wasn't just a band.
No, they operated like a high-functioning global business. They negotiated these massive world tour deals, maximized every return, but, and this is the absolute key, Bono retained ownership of U2's publishing rights.
Okay, wait, hold on a second. For anyone listening who doesn't track IP law, why is that one detail retaining publishing rights such a massive lever?
That is the essential technical detail.
How does that give you institutional power?
Because when you own your publishing, you own the composition itself, the song.
The actual notes and lyrics.
The underlying asset. It means you get decades-long streams of stable, reliable revenue every time that song is played on the radio, in a movie, anywhere. It's not a volatile asset, it's structural equity.
So you own this stream, not just the one-time flood of cash from an album sale.
Precisely. And when you go into a room with presidents or, the World Bank, they don't care about your concert ticket sales.
Right.
They care about dependable, deep-pocketed balance sheets. Owning that IP gives you the stability that signals you are a serious generational financial player, which is how, by 2025, his net worth gets to that estimated $700 million. It's all built on quiet financial control, not public spectacle.
And the moment this all shifted from just managing music money to actually playing the global finance game, that was 2004, he makes a genuinely shocking move. He co-founds a private equity firm, Elevation Partners.
This was a brilliant move. Just a calculated pivot designed to secure credibility way outside of music.
And the firm's focus.
Media, technology, and no surprise, intellectual property. And crucially, he partnered with serious Silicon Valley heavyweights. Fred Anderson, the former Apple exec.
So that gives him instant legitimacy.
Winston. It says, "I'm not a celebrity dabbler, I'm a principal."
And of course, the big headline that came out of Elevation Partners, the one everyone remembers, was the Facebook investment.
Absolutely. Elevation famously invested, $210 million into Facebook before the IPO?
A huge sum.
A huge bet. And they got about a 1.5% stake. So when Facebook went public, the media just ran with it. Bono is now a billionaire. The return was reportedly tenfold.
And here's where the philosophy we talked about meets the architecture. Because while that investment blew up, Bono later clarified that most of the profits went back to the fund.
Yes.
back to Elevation Partners, not into his personal bank account. What does that signal to the global elite?
That decision is the entire point of this deep dive, really. Had Bono just pocketed $1 billion and bought the biggest yacht he could find, he's just another rich celebrity. But by keeping the profits institutional, he signaled his objective was systemic leverage, not personal gain. He was building something.
He solidified Elevation Partners as a serious long-term player.
Exactly. It proved his commitment to building a financial infrastructure that could back up his policy work, and he kept diversifying. Strategic real estate in Dublin, New York, Paris. He co-founded ethical brands like 80 Known with his wife.
Tying his commerce to his conscience?
It's all connected. It's a serious portfolio, and all that financial gravity led a friend of his to say he doesn't walk into meetings to impress. He walks in knowing he already owns the table.
The money buys him the seat.
It buys him the seat. But then the question becomes, once he sits down with Bush or Blair or the G7 leaders,
how does he prove he deserves to be there? And that brings us to the hidden infrastructure, the incredible internal discipline he has.
This is the most surprising part because it's so contrary to the whole rock star archetype. He maintains this almost ascetic daily reality. We're talking about a guy who avoids drinking, follows a remarkably strict sleep routine, even on tour.
On tour? That's insane.
Right, meditates. And this is the critical part. He spends his late nights reading deep policy reports, economic white papers, development briefings.
How is that even possible? I mean, isn't that the biggest conflict? Maintaining that level of rigorous intellectual prep while dealing with the sheer chaos and exhaustion of a world tour.
It's the ultimate test. And the only way to pass it is consistency. He really operates with two distinct identities.
Right.
There's the electric performer on stage, the charismatic frontman we all see.
And then there's the strategist off stage.
The strategist, the guy rigorously prepping speeches, reviewing the minutiae of multilateral development goals.
And that dual identity, it allowed him to pull off some incredible things, didn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, think about U2's peak in the early 2000s. He's performing to sold-out arenas night after night. And at the same time, he's flying between concerts to meet with the Bush administration, the World Bank, African finance ministers, all to relentlessly push for global debt relief.
He's not just sending a PR team with a soundbite.
No. He is in the weeds, personally negotiating policy details. You can't do that on charisma alone. That requires deep, deep commitment.
He once said something like, the hardest thing wasn't staying relevant, but staying grounded when you are.
And that's it. His routines protect his purpose. Consistency beats charisma in the long game of influence. That's the quiet intellectual infrastructure that makes it all work.
Okay, let's shift to the inner engine driving all of this, because it's clearly not just ambition. His biggest decisions seem to be shaped by a really personal history.
Very personal. Specifically, the sudden, just brutal trauma of losing his mother, Iris, when he was only 14.
And in that loss, it became the crucible for his activism.
It did. That grief, that doubt, it turned into this powerful moral imperative. It led to his philosophy of moral risks.
What's that exactly?
He defined it as the conviction that silence is complicity. He prioritized these huge policy campaigns and famously turned down million-dollar brand deals just to maintain that clear value alignment.
But the critics, and you see this cynicism everywhere, they called him a self-serving dilettante.
Yeah.
A celebrity just trying to polish his own brand.
Right.
So how does that moral risk idea work as a defense against that kind of cynicism?
Well, I think he weaponized moral clarity against it. When he was criticized, he wouldn't get into a war of words. He would respond with factual, unblinking policy questions.
Like that famous quote.
Exactly. That direct, unavoidable language. Every week, 30,000 children die unnecessarily of extreme poverty. I'm not okay with that, are you? You can't just dismiss that as celebrity noise when it's backed by his level of homework.
And that conviction gave him the credibility for the definitive example of his silent power in action, the 2005 G8 summit in Glen Eagles.
That's where the rock star truly became the diplomat. He personally lobbied George W. Bush and Tony Blair leading up to and during that summit.
And the result was?
Massive. His lobbying contributed directly to forgiving over $40 billion in African debt.
$40 billion.
That's institutional transformation. It affected the lives of over 30 million people in 18 countries.
So how did he do it? How do you persuade these hardened political leaders to move that far?
He persuaded them through credibility. through the deep relationships he'd built and through emotional intelligence. He wasn't demanding a seat at the table.
He had earned it.
He had earned it. As one ZU diplomat put it, he's the only rock star who walks into a G7 room, and everyone already knows he did his homework. He moves things because he acts like a serious political operator, not just an artist making a donation.
Of course, no career on this scale is without its setbacks.
Yeah.
A long game like this means you have to survive the storms, and he definitely faced a few.
Oh, for sure.
There was that huge public backlash over the surprise U2 album drop on iTunes in 2014.
People felt like it was forced on them.
Yeah. And financially, some of those early elevation investments in companies like Palm and Forbes, they were heavily criticized.
And those setbacks are just a necessary part of the long game. His strategy wasn't to quit or hide, it was to adapt.
So when the fund was criticized for tech overreach, he didn't just cash out.
No, he doubled down on due diligence. He pivoted the firm's focus toward more impact-driven investments, shifting capital into things like vaccine access and clean energy.
So the failures actually refined the purpose. They reinforced his credibility instead of eroding it.
Exactly. And you saw the same thing when U2's mainstream popularity started to wane in the late 2010s. He didn't chase some cheap chart hit.
No, he launched that memoir, Surrender, in 2022.
And then toured with that minimalist solo show. It was a strategic rebuilding of the narrative, all based on radical honesty and a kind of strategic humility, acknowledging the failures, the vulnerability.
He turned the comeback into the strategy.
In his own words, momentum is not always forward. Sometimes the comeback is the strategy. He gets that failure is temporary if you just keep evolving. You just have to maintain that alignment between your voice, your values, and your capital.
So this deep dive into Bono's $700 million power play, it really reveals this invisible architecture of influence. It's all built on an unusual financial philosophy, immense internal discipline, and a complete alignment of his voice, his values, and his capital. He builds a legacy not by being loud, but by cultivating the infrastructure to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And his life really asks us all a central question. What are you using your worth, your influence, your time, your capital for?
I think the true takeaway here is that power, especially now, doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being listened to, even when you're silent. Bono found that lasting influence required building deep, credible relationships and just doing the intellectual homework that allowed him to be heard by presidents, even though he was, at the end of the day, an artist.
So for you, the listener, think about this. What area of your own life or your work could be transformed if you adopted that same strategy? What if you swapped the algorithmic noise and the superficial trends we're all swimming in for quiet credibility, for structural stability, and for deep, consistent preparation? That quiet work, that's where your true influence really lies.